Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Next Gen Convos podcast. Today, we are interviewing Cara Nord from the OCR.
The material and information presented here is provided by lived experience youth and for general information purposes only. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed are of the guests of our podcast own and do not represent the views, thoughts, and opinions of Youth Move.
We're excited to have you here. It's awesome. So, our first question is we would like you to introduce yourself and how you got involved with your organization and what it does.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here. My name is indicated as Cara Nord, and I work for the Office of the Child's Representative, or OCR, as we're known as. I am one of those annoying people who knew from a very young age that I wanted to become an attorney to help children. So I went to undergrad and studied at college. I studied philosophy, pre-law, in American politics because, again, knew I wanted to be a lawyer to help kiddos. And then I went to law school at Gonzaga University on a full tuition scholarship because I knew that I was going to work in the public interest, became a lawyer, and basically have been working with children ever since. OCR, or the Office of the Child's Representative, is a state agency that oversees and supports attorneys throughout the state of Colorado who help young people. Two types of those attorneys are Guardians Ad Litem, or GALs, and they are the attorneys who represent what they determine is in the best interest of young people based on a thorough and independent investigation of young people's best interests. The other type of attorney that we commonly work with are called CFY, which stands for Counsel for Youth. And Counsel for Youth represent what young people age 12 and older want in their dependency and neglect cases. And the law just recently changed in the last couple of years so that to create Counsel for Youth. So that's kind of a new area of the law in Colorado.
Super, super awesome. Since you mentioned GAL or Guardian Ad Litem, can you talk about what GALs are and what they're for or used for?
Absolutely. So I probably should explain my job at the OCR is my title is Youth Empowerment Attorney, which means I get to work on some really cool projects related to engaging with young people and empowering young people. Youth voice matters to OCR. We want to know youth opinion about how our attorneys are doing. We want to get youth thoughts about law, policy, and practice and how we can improve those. So we try to involve young people in everything we do at the OCR. In terms of Guardians Ad Litem, again, a Guardian Ad Litem is an attorney who represents the best interests of a young person aged 0 to 11 in a dependency and neglect case. So if there's a case where, a young person has been abused or neglected, this is an attorney that's automatically appointed to the young person and does an investigation, goes to the young person's school, talks with the parents, talks with the young person, observes visits, gets lots of information. And then from that information, they determine what is in the best interest of the young person. And then they advocate for or fight for in court what they have determined is in the best interest of the young person. And they also tell the court what the young person wants. So that's also a very important piece that even though they're arguing for what they've determined is in the best interest of the child, they still have a duty to tell the court what the young person wants, because sometimes that could be different.
That is super, super cool. So my next question is kind of around Guardian Ad Litem because you said 0 to 11. So I'm assuming that's the new law that you were talking about that switched. So so they would then be appointed Counsel for Youth?
Yes, that's correct.
Awesome. And the Counsel for Youth do the same thing as the GAL?
No, much different. The Counsel for Youth represents what the young person wants. So the Counsel for Youth still does that same independent investigation, but that investigation is really used as a basis to counsel the young person, to come to the young person and say, hey, this is the issue currently before the court. These are some of your options. These are some of the consequences of those options. What would you like to go for? And again, this new law was created largely to elevate young people's voice in their own cases, right? When a young person has a dependency and neglect case filed, as you know better than anyone else, Lizzie, their lives are turned upside down, right? They have a court telling them where they're going to live, who they're going to visit, where they're going to go to school, and so many other things. So it seems appropriate that young people should have a say and ideally have an attorney who stands up for what they want in their cases. So we're really excited about this new law.
I love that so much. Kudos to Colorado for doing that. Because you are right. Those, like we've talked about on the podcast before, I've had it open DNN before and I was removed, and I had a GAL who just stayed with me through everything. Sometimes maybe didn't do what I wanted to do and thought was in the best interest. But now that, like, I love the age of 0 to 11, and then around 12 being that age of like, okay, what do you want? So that's super awesome. Thank you for sharing about that.
One thing that's really neat about that too, Lizzie, is a young person could have, attorney A as their guardian ad litem from ages 10 to 11. But then when they turn 12, they don't have to start over with a new attorney. That same attorney will just shift and they'll take their GAL hat off and they'll put their CFY hat on. So they'll shift from being the guardian ad litem to the counsel for youth. So they don't have to start all over. They have the same attorney that they've known and hopefully built a really great rapport with. And they just kind of switch their role a little.
Okay, that just made me love that so much more. Because you do build a rapport after years, and no one can see my facial expressions, but I was actually very shocked when Cara mentioned that because, that it's the consistency, and I love that. So the next question we have is, what kind of services do you offer to attorneys?
Absolutely. So we do our best to support our attorneys in everything that we do. A new attorney with our office gets a mentor, which is an attorney who's experienced in their area. And, they can call their mentor, email, text, whatever, however they like to communicate at any time and get that kind of, real life, real time advice from an attorney who's been doing this for a minute or more. We also provide our attorneys free access to Westlaw, which is like an online search engine for laws and rules and cases regarding child welfare. We also train our attorneys. If anyone's interested in free trainings or learning more about child welfare law, you could go to our website, which is Colorado, spelled out, child rec, REP. So COLORADOCHILDREP.org. And then you click on our trainings tab. You can find lots of free trainings and free materials there. So the general public can use those as well as our attorneys. Our attorneys also have an online litigation toolkit, we call it. And it's filled with like documents that they can file in court. It's filled with things like checklists. And it also has social science resources. So for example, if they're thinking about, should this young person stay here? Or, would it be better if they move to a new placement? They can actually do some social science research on our litigation toolkit as well. Another resource that I absolutely have to mention, probably my favorite resource at the Office of the Child's Representative, we call the GRID, which is GRID, and that stands for Guided Reference and Dependency. And this is basically a bench book that goes through all the hearings in a dependency and neglect case in chronological order. And then in the second part of the book, it goes through lots of issues that are frequently raised in dependency and neglect cases. And it goes through those issues in alphabetical order. While this seems like, oh my gosh, that's such a nerdy attorney thing, again, if you go to our website, at the top of our website, you'll see where it says grid book. And if you click on that, it's available to the general public as well as our attorneys. So if anyone's ever curious to learn about dependency and neglect hearings or issues, anyone can just click right on there and learn about it. So again, there are other resources. We have tons of resources. We have a listserv. So at any point, any of our attorneys can email a question out to over 200 attorneys across the state and kind of get their advice and tips. But we just have tons and tons of resources. We staff cases with our attorneys as well. So lots and lots of services and support for our attorneys.
I love that. Especially as I'm learning more and more about the system because going through it, it's different than reading about it. So here's something I'm really excited to talk about. First, I'm going to skip a question and then come back to the question, but I really want to talk about scratch this, but I think we're going to just combine two questions. Can you tell us about the Live Expert Action Panel as well as your guides' work on the Foster Youth Bill of Rights that is happening right now?
Absolutely. So the Lived Experts Action Panel, or LEAP, is a group of young people who have experience in court systems and different types of cases. Some of those cases are truancy cases where someone is saying that kids aren't going to school. Another one is dependency and neglect cases, where again, someone is saying that a young person may be abused or neglected. And another case type is juvenile delinquency cases, where someone says that a young person did something that's against the law. So in this Lived Experts Action Panel, we have young people who have had truancy cases, dependency and neglect cases, and juvenile delinquency cases. LEAP has been in existence for 3 years, and we meet with LEAP once a month as a large group. And in these large group meetings, we'll do just various things. They'll give us input on a survey that we ask young people to complete about their Guardians Ad Litem and Counsel for Youth. We'll talk about legislation that's currently pending that it will affect young people at the Colorado legislature. We just do a ton of things at these large group meetings. We'll hear from various organizations who are interested in young people participating in their groups as well. LEAP members give us input into the questions that we ask new attorneys. So it's been really cool when we ask LEAP members to have some input into the questions that we ask. They suggested that we add questions, for example, around trauma. And, if you're an attorney who's interested in doing this work, what experience, education, training do you have around trauma? And, what will you do if a young person is having, experiencing some trauma or they're triggered? How will you react to those situations? Another question that LEAP came up with is litigation. And how will you talk with a young person about, hey, we're going to have a contested hearing and you're going to testify. And what does that mean? And how do you get a young person ready for it? So it's been fantastic having LEAP's input basically into everything we do to improve law, policy, and practice. It's been phenomenal. Oh, they also train our new attorneys. Actually, they train our attorneys, period. I shouldn't say just new attorneys. Every year, they train our new attorneys at something that's called Core Competencies 1, which is like basic CFY work 101. But then throughout the year, they participate in various trainings too. We've had LEAP members participate in state, national trainings on topics such as the importance of youth attending court hearings, just the importance of youth voice in general, about LEAP and how LEAP has gone over the last 3 years and other topics. So it's been amazing having LEAP. And I pinch myself every day. I can't believe I get paid to work with these amazing LEAP members. You also asked about the Foster Youth Bill of Rights. Another thing that I'm super excited about. This is, if you're curious, Colorado House Bill 24-1017. And this is a bill that basically does 3 things. First, it provides a very clear list of what the rights are of young people in foster care. We used to have a law that sort of did this, but that law only called them protections or safeguards. And those protections and safeguards were allowed to be limited quite often. Whereas in this new bill, it's very clear that these are rights. The second thing that this bill does is require young people to receive notice of their rights. So at their initial placement, as well as every change in placement and other points of their case, they're to get some appropriate, notice of what these rights are. So what is this list of rights and what does this mean? My office, the Office of the Child's Representative, is required by the bill to work with young people, young, amazing people, to come up with kind of a form or a template that walks through all those rights in a way that young people can understand and really apply to their own lives. So first is it creates those rights. Second, it requires the notice. Third is it makes those rights enforceable. And by that, I mean these rights only be denied in very limited circumstances. And before they can be denied or limited, a court has to find by clear and convincing evidence, which is higher than preponderance, the evidence, but lower than beyond a reasonable doubt, that it's necessary for these rights to be limited or denied. So instead of just having a list, we have a list of rights. We've got notice requirements and got enforceability in court. So sometimes they'll talk about the law not having any teeth because, you can just have a list, but then there's no way to enforce it. But this time we actually have some enforcement too. So we're super excited about it. And lead members were the first stakeholder group that got to look at the bill and provide their input into the bill. And then as things have gone on, we've gotten input from LEAP members again. We also got input from young people with lived expertise outside of LEAP. And LEAP members have testified at the Capitol about the importance of this bill. So it's been really cool to see this bill get enacted, hopefully get enacted. It's going through the process right now to really, again, give voice, give some empowerment, and give some engagement to young people who are in foster care.
I think the foster youth bill of rights is going to change a lot of lives. Because like you said, there was that protection, but it could be restricted. And it has been very gut-wrenching to watch. But I just know that once it's through, Colorado will be thriving a little better than where we were. It's all about youth voice and what we think is going to be good. And I love that the LEAP, which is the Live Expert Action Panel, had a lot of say in that and what's being talked about. And yeah, I'm so excited for this bill to go through. Yeah, I'm so excited. So, well, we kind of talked about a lot of these. We talked about the grid litigation. Yeah, is there anything else that you would like to talk about around OCR? I love what OCR does. I may or may not have I tried to join, which I love. And I love that you're very youth voice driven. And that seems to be very, very important to OCR. So I'm curious of what else we can talk about. Anything you would like around OCR.
Absolutely. So I think there's two more pieces. One is some of the benefits applying for our Lived Experts Action Panel. We provide young people $30 checks for when a young person attends our monthly meetings. So when LEAP members attend those monthly, about an hour-long meeting, we send them a $30 check for that. There are also longer events. So if a LEAP member were to participate, for example, in an event that takes all day, the payment can reach up to hundreds of dollars. So there are benefits to attending financially. Another benefit to participating in LEAP is the connections that are made between the LEAP members. We have one LEAP member who, when they joined LEAP, was in the Department of Youth Services. learned that they were up for early parole. Many of the LEAP members wrote letters on their behalf for their parole hearing. A LEAP member and I actually appeared for the parole hearing, and the young person did get early parole. So it's been beautiful just to see the relationships and connections and kind of family that's been established between the LEAP members. Another benefit is the skills that LEAP members can gain. LEAP members can co-facilitate a meeting with an OCR staff member. They can create an agenda with us. Obviously, you learn a lot of writing. You learn a lot of public speaking. This year, of course, LEAP members are learning a lot about how a bill becomes a law in the Colorado legislature and actually, participating in that process. And another benefit of participating in LEAP is letters of recommendation. We have had LEAP members apply for an internship at the Capitol in Washington, D.C. OCR wrote them a letter of recommendation, and this LEAP member actually interned at the United States Capitol last summer. We have a LEAP member who's been accepted to 2 law schools. We wrote letters of recommendation for the law schools, and now that LEAP member is also applying for full tuition scholarships, and we're writing letters of recommendation for that. So lots of benefits, whether they be, tangible, here's the check, or these intangible, benefits of connections and skills that can be included in resumes. And then these letters of recommendation that hopefully can, result in additional opportunities, financial assistance, et cetera. When we chatted before, we also talked a little bit about what can folks do to participate in OCR's activities and in our efforts to engage and empower young people. And I think there's really 2 answers to that. One is encourage young people. And if you are a young person, please apply for LEAP. The applications will be coming out in May of 2024. And again, if you go to our website, coloradochildrep.org, and then you click on youth, the application for LEAP will be right there. So please, everyone and anyone who has lived expertise in the system, please apply. Secondly, OCR goes around the state and completes what we call youth survey events. Come to these events with chips and information about different programs that can benefit young people, as well as a survey and a $10 gift card for young people who are willing to complete a survey about their Guardian Ad Litem or Counsel for Youth. So the purpose of these events is really, again, just youth voice and to let young people know that they matter. Because they matter, we're traveling over the state to see them. Because they matter, we bring this program information and want to help them. And because their voice matters, we really want to hear their thoughts about their Guardian Ad Litem or Counsel for Youth. And by that, I mean the good, the bad, the ugly, the amazing, the opportunities for growth. We want to hear it all so we can make sure that our attorneys are, truly providing the services that they should be providing. So if you're interested in hosting one of these youth survey events, you can go again on our website, and which is coloradochildrep.org, and click on contact, and then just send an email saying, hey, I heard about these youth survey events. I'd love to host one. And then we can work out those details.
Yay, that is super awesome. I love that the youth get to have a say about or share their feedback about their GALs. I've done it every opportunity I can because I loved my GAL. I had her for 5 years and then she left. And then I got a new GAL who I again loved and then got sentenced to the Division of Youth Services. So I think that it's very important that the youth and young adults who are going through this have a say of anything and everything that's happening to them. And I think that the OCR and LEAP is very adamant about it. I've heard from several different people about how amazing. Oh, have you heard about what OCR is doing? No, I haven't. What are you doing? And it's just so cool that it started 3 years ago, and look at all the cool changes that are happening right now because of OCR and LEAP.
Well, thank you, Lizzie. Can I ask you a question?
Oh yeah, you can ask me any question.
Fantastic. What did you like about your GALs? What was good about?
So my first GAL, I was very stubborn. I was very hard headed, and I also get attached really quickly. So my first GAL I had for 5 years, she really could see through everything that was happening, even though it was more about what was in my best interest. She knew talking to me will figure out what's in my best interest. And there was times where she was showing up on holidays to meet with me while I'm in a place because I had no one. So just the over and above that she did for me. And she didn't try to force the permanency goal of me going home when she knew that that's not what I wanted and that's not what was in my best interest. While every single other person wanted me to go home, she was like, nope, not happening. My second GAL, I met her when my first GAL went on maternity leave. So it was really easier for me to transition once my old GAL left. It's still really hard. But she kind of did the same thing and she kind of knew my story, but she was more of like, she fought really hard for me about not me not getting sentenced to DYS because I didn't have any criminal charges. So just the fighting that they did for me when no one else was fighting for me.
Right? It's that voice piece, right? Having someone who's in your corner and who's listening and who's contacting you and connecting with you. Yeah. Those are just critical pieces of what it means to be a guardian ad litem. If if you would have had a counsel for youth, how do you think your experience would have been different?
I feel like I wouldn't have got committed.
Oh yeah.
Um, Actually, maybe not. I don't know.
Counsel for youth doesn't work. We don't have counsel for youth in delinquency cases right now. We just have counsel for youth in dependency and neglect case. So when that young person turns 12 in any dependency and neglect case, that's when it shifts over.
Oh, because my GAL was also like when I ended up getting in trouble or whatever they used to sentence me, my GAL was fighting for me there too.
They can be a GAL in both case types, but once a young person turns 12 now, if you have a dependency and neglect case, you get counsel for youth in your dependency and neglect case. And then you have to have separate guardian ad litem in your delinquency case.
Ew.
Because it would be conflict for the same attorney to wear both hats, wear either the GAL hat or the counsel for youth hat.
Okay. So I think if I had a counsel for youth, I feel like I wouldn't have been moved so many times.
Why do you feel that way? I'm curious.
Okay, I loved my first GAL. I'm going to say that again. But I was put in a foster home that was not the best fit for me. More of like, but she also had a previous or had another youth there on her caseload. So it was all good for her, but for me, it was different. And she was like, yeah, this is most awesome placement. But I told her, like, hey, this foster parent is telling me this. If I get kicked out, he's going to make it where I won't be able to go to another foster home. And no shocker, I got kicked out. And what happened? The same thing, like what he said, happened. And when I brought that to her attention, it kind of was like, he wouldn't do that. So I feel like if I had a counsel for youth, it wouldn't have been like that because they would have seen like, hey, this is what this person's saying. Clearly she's not comfortable. Why is she running away all the time? I think that that would have helped and it might have actually changed the course of my life. I'm being
We've
honest.
heard stories of young people who, have had an attorney as their guardian ad litem. The minute they hear that that attorney is now their counsel for youth, once they hear that and once they understand, that there's an attorney-client privilege between a young person and a counsel for youth, there's a secrecy there, a privacy. that young people will say things or just talk and talk and talk, say things that the attorney never knew as their guardian ad litem. But now that they know that there's this secret or kind of private relationship, young people are much more open and will share, many more very important pieces of information that can do things like you said, like keep their placement or find them a placement that's a better fit and advocate for that. Agree?
Yeah. I think that's the hardest thing about having emails too is that some things you just don't want to say because you know it can backfire at you in court. I may or may not have had that happen a couple times when I thought, oh, this person cares about me. Let me tell everything that's going on in my life. Nope, not the case. And I think with the counsel for use, it's more of like a safe person, not even like that person that you've built that trust with. You can now let everything that has gone on go.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And of course, there's some limits to that. If we find out that someone, is, harm, the parent harm, or they might harm someone else or might commit a crime, but that's just like very, extreme situations where that attorney-client privilege can be, yeah, can be something that, comes in question or, we have to really think about, is it appropriate to disclose something?
Have you seen on your end, have you seen a change in youth, young adults, youth? Not, I don't know if successfulness is the word, but once they switch from a GAL to a counsel for youth, have you seen a switch in a better way?
We've heard kind of like stories here and there of, again, young people just feeling so much more comfortable, that this is another person that I can speak to about pretty much everything. And, it's a different relationship because, the counsel for you has to ask, is it okay if I let someone know this? In court, do I have your permission to tell other people X? Or do I have your permission to, let your caseworker know that you have this concern about your foster? It really puts young people, I think, in the driver's seat of their life in a way that they haven't been in a very long time. Another part that's really interesting is, attorneys get lots of paperwork, right? Young people have files that can be so thick. And with counsel for youth, it's the counsel for youth's responsibility to ask the young person, how much information do you want? Do you want to know everything? Do you want me to just hand over this 900 pages of information? Would you like to sit and talk about, which of these you'd like copies of or which of these you'd like to discuss? So young people can get much more informed through having a counsel for youth, in addition to having, this driver's seat kind of a mentality in terms of, the decisions that affect their lives. So that's been really neat, is just hearing these stories of young people and how they feel much more engaged in their cases and much more empowered within their cases. We have a young person who's on our leap who felt like she had a worker, a service provider who was not treating her very kindly. And she went to court in her foster youth and transition program case and stood up and told the judge that, what was happening in a very factual manner. And the court was very clear and issued orders saying that this worker shall not speak with this young person in a disrespectful manner. So it's been really cool hearing these stories of just young people feeling, again, more engaged and empowered in their own lives, which is how it should be.
Definitely. I agree with that completely. The one thing that we haven't mentioned is what is the age for to become a LEAP member?
Great question. Very important question. We look for 18 and older for many reasons. One is confidentiality. When once you turn 18, it's easier for you to be able to say what you want to share and who you want to share it with and how, without, having to take additional steps of getting other consent from, the Department of Human Services or parents or legal guardians, legal custodians, etc. And another reason is, it can be a little good, I think, to have some space in between some experience with the system and, something like this, because, it's hard work, right? Trying to improve laws and policies and practice in ways that benefit young people. It's hard work and it can be very triggering work. So I think sometimes having that, little gap in time can be a good thing.
I agree. I'm glad to hear that. 100%. Because you are right. Like this, I 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. Wow. Okay. It's been 8 years since I've been out of the system. Nope.
Congratulations.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's when I ended chafy. Anyways, I don't know. But it's been a long time that I've been out of the system. And even still to this day, some things can be very triggering. I'm trying to word this. How do I word this? Being able to hear some of the testifying that has happened and then hearing the backfire from people, it's very, very hard and very, very triggering. So I definitely understand why it is. Is there an age gap or not an age gap, an age cap?
We do not currently have an age cap. We just look for 18 and older. We have one LEAP member who's 30. So we don't have a cap. At least we haven't established one yet. And it's interesting you bring up that testimony. I think you're referring to the testimonial in this House Bill 241017 that's looking at a foster youth Bill of Rights. The young people initially testified in front of a House committee on the Department of Human Services. And, during that committee, there were some really difficult questions. There were some targeted questions about some parts of the bill that say that it's a young person's right to be called by their preferred pronouns, for example. I think it's really important to know that this bill is, I believe, something like 350 lines long and only 12 lines, 2 of this 350 something line bill reference LGBTQ, LGBTQ plus. LGBTQ plus is extremely important to OCR, as is race, color, national origin, gender, etc. And it was hard at this committee meeting. Some of the members of this committee, some of the legislators asked some pretty painful questions. And there were tears during the committee meeting. And I'll say that it's been really neat to see what's happened since then. One of the LEAP members received an email from one of the legislators apologizing for impacting the LEAP member negatively during the hearing. Another LEAP member later heard one of the legislators on the House floor kind of mischaracterize their testimony. And that LEAP member emailed that legislator and said, you misstated my testimony. This is actually what I said. It's very important to me that you hear me. And this young person feels very, empowered by the process. Although it was hard that day at that hearing, since then, by one receiving an apology and another kind of saying, hey, you need to listen to me. And it's important to me to actually hear what I had to say, that this has turned into a very empowering experience for them. So it's been fantastic seeing, as the bill progresses, and hopefully it'll continue to progress, how LEAP members are finding their voices. And we've had a couple meetings with LEAP members too, where they can just come together and process what's happening at the different stages of the bill. So again, leading to that connection and relationships with one another.
Brilliant. I love that. I love that the member got an apology. I love that they were able to feel empowered. That's super important when it comes to these things in OCR. And I've seen that firsthand. Is there anything else you want to share?
I am good. Thank you so much for this opportunity, lady.
Yeah, thank you for being here. And I appreciate you yeah, just opening up and sharing about your job. Thank you for being with us today.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome.